It's 6 p.m. on Wednesday here in Korea. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Hwang Ji-hye. These are the top stories we're following today. According to a local media outlet, North Korea is gearing up to launch a new long-range rocket to mark the 70th anniversary of its ruling Workers' Party in October. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is facing opposition for his continued refusal to acknowledge his country's wartime aggressions, with some serious consequences for him at home and abroad. Korea unveils measures to tackle the country's snowballing household debt, one of the major risks that could hurt the country's growth potential. We start off with North Korea that's showing signs of launching yet another provocation. South Korean military sources say the reclusive regime has finished upgrading a launch tower for long-range missiles. Our Han Da-eun has the details.
This is the Unha-3 rocket North Korea launched in 2012 from its northwestern Pyonganbuk-do province near the West Sea. Soon after the launch, North Korea announced the satellite placed inside the rocket was successfully put into orbit. Now, 3 years later, North Korea has completed an upgrade of the launch pad that propelled the Unha-3, extending the height of the launch tower from 50 meters to 67 meters tall. South Korean military and intelligence sources said Wednesday the upgraded launch site will enable North Korea to fire a long-range missile twice the size of the 30-meter-long Unha-3. Weapons experts say that means North Korean missiles can now fly further with heavier warheads. They add the upgrade is an indication of the regime's ambitions to fire an intercontinental ballistic missile, which has a range of more than 10,000 kilometers. Military sources in Seoul also believe Pyongyang will test-fire a long-range rocket from the new launch pad around October 10th, which is the 70th anniversary of the founding of the ruling Workers' Party. Han Da-eun, Arirang News.
And while North Korea heightens military tensions, the United States says it only engage in talks with North Korea when the regime shows the world it's ready to give up its nuclear weapons. Our Kim Hyun-bin reports.
The U.S. State Department has reiterated that Washington can never accept North Korea as a nuclear weapons state. The statement came less than 24 hours after North Korea boasted about its nuclear capabilities and said the world should forget about trying to make it abandon its nuclear ambitions. John Kirby, spokesman for the U.S. State Department, says Washington is open to dialogue with the North, but stressed the onus is on the regime to take concrete steps towards denuclearization before any talks resume. Also on the diplomatic front, Washington's special envoy for the six-party talks on North Korea's nuclear program will visit South Korea, China, and Japan starting later this week. Sources in Washington say Sidney Seiler will embark on his trip to Asia from July 25th. His first stop is Seoul. Seiler is expected to discuss strategies with his counterparts to deal with North Korean provocations. However, there's a widespread view the long-stalled six-party talks are unlikely to resume anytime soon, as North Korea continues to refuse U.S. demands that it first take clear and verifiable steps to show it's ready to scrap its nuclear program. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Civic groups from the two Koreas will meet on Thursday to discuss a possible joint Liberation Day celebration on August 15th. An official at Seoul's Unification Ministry says the government has approved the planned meeting between the two groups. It's scheduled to take place in the North Korean border town of Kaesong. The South Korean group is expected to suggest holding simultaneous joint celebrations in Seoul and Pyongyang. It'll also propose having representatives from the two Koreas attend each other's event. If the two sides agree, it will be the first time in 10 years that the two Koreas will celebrate Liberation Day together. In the months leading up to the 70th anniversary next month of Japan's surrender in World War II, the focus has been on the tone and content of a statement to be made by Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Now, with the date fast approaching, many have expressed concern the statement may not uphold the apologetic tone struck in another statement made 2 decades ago. Our Kim Ji-yeon has the details.
There's mounting pressure on Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe to include a clear apology for the country's past atrocities in his war anniversary statement next month. U.S. Assistant Secretary of State Daniel Russell told reporters Tuesday that Abe should find a way to give voice to the feelings of remorse the Japanese people feel and have demonstrated, and to include a clear apology for the country's past atrocities. But the general consensus among media outlets in Japan is that Abe will not use the words colonial rule or apology, though he may mention an attack or remorse in consideration of Sino-Japanese relations. Both colonial rule and apology were used in the statement offered by Prime Minister Domichi Murayama in 1995, in which he also offered an apology for the suffering and damage caused by Japan's history of aggression in Asia. If Abe doesn't echo the statement either in words or sentiment, it's expected to further dent his approval ratings, which have already taken a hit since he pushed through Parliament a set of controversial security bills that will allow Japan to expand its military role overseas. A poll by the Sankei Shimbun and Fuji News Network last weekend found Abe's support rate had dropped nearly 7 percentage points from the previous month to 39%, while his disapproval rating jumped 10 percentage points to 53%. This is the first time since Abe took office in December 2012 that his disapproval rating has exceeded his approval rating in polls conducted by the right-leaning media outlets. Kim Jeon, Arirang News.
Now over at the National Assembly, where lawmakers remain deadlocked over a spy agency scandal and a bill for a $10 billion budget supplement. The ruling Saenuri Party is worried that the budget bill may not pass by the party's target of Friday. The main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy is calling for a drastic cut to the supplement. It also accused the ruling party and the government of trying to cover up allegations that the spy agency meddled in elections and wiretapped citizens. Let's listen to what the floor leaders of the two parties had to say.
The budget supplement is to help cover damages related to the MERS outbreak and the drought and to stabilize the economy. A sufficient reinforcement of funds is necessary to achieve the maximum effect. The bill should be approved by Friday.
The Saenuri Party has refused our demands to raise the corporate tax rate, to reduce the fiscal deficit, and also to hold a parliamentary hearing on the spy agency scandal.
With lawmakers mired in debate, there are growing concerns that July may come and go with little progress on either issue. Now shifting gears, the tourism industry has taken the biggest hit from the MERS outbreak, so much so that Korea's top central banker says the impact could drag down the country's GDP growth by 0.1 percentage point this year. At a meeting with economists today, Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ju-yeol said the number of overseas tourists dropped by 53% in June from a year earlier, and he believes a rebound won't be easy in the crucial July to August summer vacation season. He also encouraged Koreans to take their vacations within the country if possible, as that will help the domestic economy recover. The Korean government today laid out plans to tackle the country's staggering household debt, currently at $950 billion. The key point of the measures is that the government will make it easier for debtors to repay their loans, but for some, it may not be enough. Our Shin Se-min has this story.
The Korean government and related authorities have unveiled a set of ambitious measures to help contain household debt while promising to maintain policies that will bolster economic growth.
While bank loans have helped spur the housing market, the new measures will ensure household debt does not drag down the economy.
The measures involve tightening the screening process for borrowers and stepping up monitoring of second-tier banks that are subject to looser financial regulations. The Financial Services Commission also said it would restructure loans to encourage borrowers to pay back the principal and the interest rather than just the interest, and drop the ratio of amortized loans to 45% of total bank lending by the end of 2017. Korea's overwhelming borrowing spree has been triggered by eased regulations on loans for real estate and the country's record low interest rate. But experts say the high debt levels do not yet represent an imminent threat.
The top 40% in terms of income takes up nearly 3/4 of the total liabilities in household debt, meaning they're more likely to be able to repay their debt. In other words, it's not a serious issue.
But the bigger problem lies with borrowers in the lower income brackets. The new debt measures fail to address those that have already taken out loans and are struggling to make ends meet, an issue that needs to be addressed with an eye to the long term.
Labor market reforms must accompany the household debt measures, because improving people's ability to repay their debt can only be done by raising wages.
Experts say that while the new debt plans are a step in the right direction, it's necessary to strengthen the lending and repayment system to ensure it is less vulnerable to risks from home and abroad, including the possibility of a rate hike in the U.S. Shin, Arirang News.
Now, less than a year after the country's first innovation center opened in Daegu, Korea's network of 17 creative economy centers is now complete, with the last center opening in Incheon today. We're already seeing some results from these centers created to support the startup movement, which also has the full backing of the government. Song Ji-sun reports.
The Incheon Center opened Wednesday with the goal of remaking the western port city into a smart logistics hub. 1/3 of Korea's trade volume passes through the city, and the new center aims to use its strategic location to facilitate exchanges between Korean and Chinese startups. With the center's launch, President Park Geun-hye's creative economy drive is now in full swing.
전국 창조경제 혁신 센터들이 각 지역별 강점과 후원 기업의 역량을 결합해서 대한민국 창조 경제를 선도해 나갈 수 있도록 이 자리에 계신 모든 분들이 힘과 지혜를 모아주시기를 바랍니다.
All 17 centers are aiming to keep pace with the changing startup landscape.
It's no longer about securing more funding. It's speed and the ability to adapt to the rapidly changing world that matters. The centers will manage regional resources and grow simultaneously, sometimes through competition and at other times through collaboration.
The Incheon Center is already collaborating with a private startup accelerator called Spark Lab, which now calls the port city home. The company aims to help local startups enter the global market and plans to host demonstrations at the center. The network has already racked up some achievements. Samsung and LG alone have shared over 90,000 patents with smaller companies, and more than 5,000 startups have received advice from the centers on launching their businesses. The task now is keeping the startup movement alive and keeping the center strong even after the end of President Park's term. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Samsung Electronics has once again easily maintained its position as the world's largest smartphone vendor. Industry tracker Trend4 says the Korean firm claimed nearly 27% of global market share in the second quarter. Apple came in second with its shipments accounting for 16%, followed by Chinese manufacturers Huawei and Xiaomi. Samsung's market share remained unchanged from the previous quarter, but Apple's slumped from the more than 20% share it posted in the first quarter. 304 million smartphones were shipped globally in the second quarter, up around 2% from the previous one. Trend4 expects the worldwide smartphone market to grow 8% this year. Construction of a large-scale oil refinery project in Kuwait will kick off soon, and Korean builders are right in the thick of the bidding action. There is hope some lucrative contracts will boost Korea's construction business in the Middle East in the second half of this year. Kwon So-ah has the details.
It's expected to be the biggest overseas construction project of the year for Korean builders, even after a few bumps in the road. The so-called new refinery project in Kuwait overcame a hurdle after bidding started in March, when estimates for the cost of the project had to be revised upward, changing the bidding process. But Korean builders and the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport said Wednesday the Kuwaiti government cleared the new budget last week and will select and notify the winners soon. There is a high chance that Korea will win the bid for a large portion of the project, as it has put up the lowest bid for 4 out of the 5 available packages. The total cost to Korean builders is expected to be almost $13 billion.
Italy and India are more likely candidates for the fourth package, but a rebid has been scheduled in case they fail to come to a compromise, so Korean builders are next in line. Korean builders haven't had a great showing in the Middle East in the first half of the year, with the region accounting for just 27% of overseas projects. That's less than $7 billion out of roughly $25.8 billion in orders. The less than rosy performance has been attributed to the drastic fall in global oil prices. But with the order from Kuwait just around the corner, the latter half looks much brighter on the construction front. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Moving on to some other news, Texas Rangers outfielder Choo Shinsoo hit for the cycle last night, becoming the first Asian in the major league to do so. For those of you who don't know, this is when a player hits a single, a double, a triple, and a homer all in the same game. Choo joins Boston Red Sox All-Star Brock Holt as the only player to complete the cycle this season. He's also the 8th Ranger to hit for the cycle in the franchise's history and the first since Alex Rios in 2013. On Tuesday night, Choo hit a double in the second inning, a homer in the fourth, a single in the fifth, and a triple in the ninth to complete the cycle and help his team beat the Colorado Rockies 9-0. And that brings us to the end of our newscast. More updates coming up at 10 p.m. Korea time. Stay tuned. Goodbye.